Welcome back to the channel. I'm Duke Delaet for the Intimacy Liberation Army, and today we're talking about successful tips for a first date. I get a lot of questions about dates, and people make them bigger than they really are. The point of a date is qualification. The point of a date is for you to go out with another human, share time and experience, and evaluate whether you want another date, whether you want to take them to girlfriend land or marriage land or long-term partner land. The whole point of a date is to go out, share time together, share an experience, create some memories, and qualify them to see if they're viable for the next level, right? That's the whole point. So when you go out on a date, your whole point is trying to qualify them to see if they meet your standards. If you haven't created a bunch of standards that you know you want to deal with, then you should probably go do that first, because going out with somebody and just seeing if the chemistry matches is not going to help you in actually systematically building the skill sets that you need to continue to succeed in making dating fun, making dating awesome for you. It can just be a grind if you don't have a plan. So the first tip for the dating thing is to figure out what you want. In this current post-millennial environment, we've got hookups, we've got poly relationships, we've got screening for marriage, we've got getting a standard relationship, having a activity partner for whatever events you like to go to. There's a million ways to go about dating. And you should be very clear on what you want, especially if you come from a leadership frame. Many of the people who are my clients and my viewers are men. We're hoping to change that as we move forward and create more inclusive content. But at the end of the day, most of the clients that really follow my stuff because of my pedigree and pickup and all that stuff over time has been a bunch of men who want to be leaders and would like supporters as, high feminine energy from a traditional perspective girlfriend. And so if you are going out on a date and you're supposed to be playing the leader role, then you should A, know what the fuck you want, and B, be able to communicate that clearly to the person that you're on a date with, so that there's no misconceptions about what the next level expectations are. So you got to figure out what you want. Do you want to hook up? Do you want to just spend some time together like if you take a date to, for instance, like a show or a concert or something, you want somebody to just be a good time on that thing, or do you want to qualify for marriage? Do you want to qualify for a girlfriend? Whatever it is, know that clearly. I had a call from one of my private clients yesterday, and he is clearly trying to get married. He's just about to be 30. He's got a strong cultural, like, Indian family background, so they expect him to handle the wife and kids process very quickly, and they got a lot of pressure on him, they got a lot of judgment on him for it. And so he's looking to go find somebody who's going to be a viable wife and to get away from some of the like, he wants to be treated a certain way in his marriage relationship. So he had a bunch of standards for that he needed to qualify the girls for when he was going out on these dates. And because the dates were kind of arranged in his culture, the qualification has to be very, very clear, because their process is really, really fast. Like, once you get set up in that arranged marriage thing, and then have to move forward quickly, like, just a matter of weeks before you make the decision to go create a whole new family lifestyle. So he had to be very, very clear on what he was looking for when he goes out on these dates. And it's kind of a different expectation than here in the West, where we have the hookup culture, we have the choice, we have the I'm not feeling it, there wasn't chemistry, there wasn't a spark. We can do that here, but out there it's a little bit different. So just know what you want. If you want hookups and you're clear with it, you can definitely create that vibe and have it be accepted. I was hanging out with this girl last week who was telling me about her latest Tinder date. Her whole point of this date was to get laid righteously so she can kind of like rebound from her ex, and so she didn't want to know his family or any of the stuff. She just wanted to know if he was like going to be safe and reasonably good time in bed. So she filtered for that, and that's fine if that's what you're looking to do. You get a couple of my clients right now. They're just like, I just want to kind of go into summer with a lot of options and go out on a bunch of dates and just practice. Cool, go do that. But be clear about that, so you're not leading everybody on. You're not creating a lot of drama. You're not disappointing people and then making them come back and break car windows. So, yeah. The first step is figure out what you want and then communicate it clearly. Second thing is to figure out what they want, because I'm not teaching you how to, like in this video, it's not about working up the courage to go on a date with somebody and what do I say. It's more like conceptual concept of like, look, you are leading, you're taking them out somewhere, and then you're going to carry on time together so you get to know them. So get to know them, like figure out what they want. What do they want for the future? What do they want for a dating relationship? What do they want for a partner, if that's what it turns into? Like get all the expectations out on the table so that you can vibe in a framework that's mutually agreed on. A guy, he sent me a recording from his date. Like yesterday he was out on a date and sent me a recording, and so I listened to it, and he went through the whole thing, and he was amping up attention and pulling it down and amping it up, and it was great and everything was cool. And then at the end of the date, as he walked her back to her car, he got really, really self-conscious and he wasn't allowed to access the good part of his brain that could be entertaining and fun and edgy and all the stuff that she was enjoying. And she was totally into it, but in the moment he couldn't tell. And so he was saying things that were shooting himself in the foot, like, oh, I didn't know if you wanted to, and like, you were confident as fuck for 2 hours, and then at the end of the day you got all in your head about it. So, okay. If you had a clear goal of what you wanted to do next, set up the second date and evaluate her for being a decent partner, then you could have carried right into that. You could have led there. So know what you want first and then figure out what they want. And if you guys match, then you can carry things to the next level. When you're having conversation on the date, we have a whole bunch of stuff about storytelling. There's a workshop on how to do storytelling and dig emotionally and connect at a more emotional level. Connect emotionally. Approve them for the things that are emotional, things that they really feel inside. Like, it's not about the modeled standards that you have, like how much money you make or what the who pays on the date, or whether or not you have whatever your vision is. It's really about how you're going to make them feel. The result is emotional. Like, if a woman's going to be mouthy or speak up and offend you, right? And you ask what kind of respect they have for the man in their life, and you get a feel of that stuff. Well, it's not really about the words that come out of her mouth or even the attitude that she has. It's about how you respond to that, and what trauma triggers that it triggers, and how you're planning on dealing with that and negotiating that in the future. Like, it has nothing to do with the words that she says, right? I had some guys who are relatively fragile. They'll go in and some girl will be like, "Don't be a little bitch," and they'll say something like that, and then the guy will be like, "Oh no, I never let somebody call me that. No, that's fucked up. No, you're not the kind of girl I want to date." And like, it's like, she was like, "Calm the fuck down. I was just joking." And then that triggered him even more, right? So we have some guys on the workshops who do that, and it's just ridiculous, because the girls are obviously trying to throw up a little bit of a front, and they can't see it because they're in their heads, and so they take it all seriously, get bent out of shape, and they want to be a certain thing, and then it kind of crumbles their ego. Figure that out. Like, when you're talking about your standards with somebody like this, the Indian guy I was talking to about before, he definitely never wanted to get back talked by a woman. Basically, was his goal. He's like, "Am I just being too harsh?" And I said, "Well, maybe, but if that's a thing that matters to you, then explore that. See why you're triggered by that. Figure out where that came from." We talked about it a little bit, and it came from how his father is kind of weak and rolled over by his mom and stuff. So get a better understanding of that, and then be able to articulate it so that people that you're dating can clearly understand why you believe the way you do. Whether or not they agree with it doesn't even matter, but they have to be able to see where you're coming from. Otherwise, they can't respect it. If they think that you're just throwing up a big egotistical front with no real data behind it, they're gonna roll over it just like everybody else. Like there's no, if you don't do the reflection and the self-awareness to figure out what's going on there, you're not gonna be able to communicate it and figure out whether they can operate within the boundaries of those, or within the bounds of those standards. So figure out what they want and dig emotionally, but stay present. So the whole point of human interaction is presence. Like if you want an authentic, vulnerable, real, connected interaction, you have to be present in the interaction. You have to be here. You can't be off somewhere thinking. You can't be comparing things to the past. You can't be comparing things to the future and sitting in anxiety. You just got to be here with the person in front of you. And you can make a lot of mistakes if you're present, because you can adapt in real time to the human that's in front of you. So as a general rule, you should always be present. When you're like, what do I say? It doesn't really matter as long as you're together while you say it. Like when you're sharing space with each other for real, when you say it, like it's going to come across very differently than something that's scripted or that you got to go think about, or you got to formulate before it comes out of your mouth. Just kind of be there and say what's on your mind. Your skill set will come with time. Like if you focus basically on being present, and then you try things to move the interaction forward or create tension or all that other stuff, like tactically, the presence will carry an honesty and a vulnerability with it, so that you can try these things and make them really a part of who you are. I was listening to the date recording from one of my private clients, and he spent 20 minutes talking about physics books. He was like really into this story of how humans came to be and whatever. And the girl didn't have any idea what he was talking about, but she was following along because he was very present in his delivery. It wasn't really about like talking about a bunch of nerdy shit and turning her on and turning her off. That didn't matter. It was about how passionate he was about it, what it said about him as a person. And because he was really congruent, really present, he came across really, really congruent, and she just kind of followed him along the adventure and tried to add what she did know into it, and it was a very good interaction for them. But if he was off trying to be like, oh, well, what's going to make me look better if I say this, and what happens when I ask her a question, she doesn't respond right, and then I try to probe her this way, and he's all in his head. Well, that's not going to work. There's not going to be a lot of connection. There's not going to be a congruence there that she can grab onto. So the general rule for all the storytelling, all the communication on the date is going to be present. So you can talk about your exes. You can trauma dump if you want. There's a lot of guys, when they come into a real date with a woman who's actually listening to them, they get caught up in this like, oh, my ex did this, and it made me feel betrayed, and then my betrayal did all this, and I don't know, maybe I'm talking too much. And they're like, no, keep going. But it's a trap, right? Because it doesn't matter what you talk about. Like you can talk about all this shit, but if you check out of the present moment and you go into the memory, and then you're over there with your communication, you're not going to bring it across the same way as if you were relating to her what you think that you needed to relate to her in the moment. I think that makes sense. Like the rule is present. So you can go trauma dump, you can go memories, you can do, my ex-girlfriend was a piece of shit, whatever it is that you want to do. But you're trying to show her, the person in front of you, who you are. And you're also trying to see her responses to figure out who she is, because the purpose of the date is qualifying her for the next level, right? So if you remove yourself from presence and you go off and you relive a traumatic memory and it just comes out of your mouth, yes, you're sharing with vulnerability, but you're not actually sharing with the person in front of you. You're off living in this little fantastical space. If you have anxiety about the future and you start talking about that stuff and you get associated into the future and you're like doing all this, you're over there in that space and you're not sharing with the person in front of you. So the golden rule for the communication on the date, no matter how you do it, whether you're doing Meow's 10-second attraction stuff, or you're doing a mystery method comfort routine, you're doing a authentic story that you've built out of one of our storytelling courses, or just shooting the shit because you have banter skills, whatever it is, it should be directed at the person in front of you for the purpose of qualifying her to see if she's got the right vibe. And vibing out so that she can qualify you on whether or not you have the right vibe. That's the whole point. So presence is the point. It doesn't really matter what you say. It does matter how connected you are to the human in front of you when you're saying it. You can have all your verbals right. Like, I went out for years going out on date after date after date after date after date, and I would tell the same stories over and over and over again, because my life is, while it's got a lot of excitement in it, like, I just got the same themes, I got the same values, right? So I would say something, and I've crafted my story down because I've told it on fucking 40 other dates, and it would come across well, I'd get a response. But it was only when I started sharing with the person in front of me what I thought I wanted to convey in that moment, when I kind of let go of like trying to control the whole situation, that's when I started making real connections with people. And those people would be much more hardcore as far as connecting with me and my vision and my passion and my adventure and my drive than any of the people that kind of followed along the scripted, manipulation-based stack. And so, yeah, I was about to go off on this whole random tangent, but be present and you're going to connect a lot better. With that connection, you can use it to build intimacy much faster. So the next tip, dating tip of glory, is amp yourself up before the date and get your mind right. If you go out a big anxiety ball and you're just trying to manage your impression the whole time, you're not going to connect. You're not going to be present. You're not going to be there. You can't control chemistry. You can't control compatibility. You can't control attraction, really. I mean, attraction is a choice, but you got to be mentally ready for when those things happen. Like when chemistry starts firing off, you can't control when it does, but when it does, you might shoot yourself in the foot and self-sabotage if you're not ready for it. So get your mind right. See what happens. Like if you look at the date in your mind when you go out, right before you go out, you future project into there and you go, okay, what's going to happen? What happens if she actually likes my jokes? What happens if she's laughing with me? What happens if we feel that spark of that connection? What am I going to do about it? And if you kind of pre-plan when you go out, like, okay, if she gives me some bullshit, then I can shift and do all this stuff. You can plan for the problems if you want, but it's going to kind of lock you into this defensive state, and you're gonna backpedal and not be present when that shit happens. I'd rather focus on what happens if she's super into it. What happens if she asks a bunch of questions about the thing that I just said about what I expect in a dating lifestyle. What happens? And when I put myself into the mindset of success, I start seeing opportunities in the conversation rather than having anything that I'm being defensive about or anything being a roadblock. And so when I say amp yourself up for the date, I don't necessarily mean go put on a bunch of badass music and feel really confident and dress really well or whatever. I mean like prepare for success. We have like viable success points. Like if you're not carrying condoms, then you probably don't intend to fuck. If your house isn't reasonably presentable, then you're probably not planning on bringing her back. if you're, your car isn't, you're embarrassed to have her come into the car, then you probably weren't intending on driving her anywhere after the date. Like you didn't have you weren't looking for opportunities because you weren't prepared. If you were looking for opportunities, you would have prepared because you assumed that this stuff probably could happen. And same thing mentally when you're talking about, like, okay, this is what I want. I'm looking to hook up with some people. I'm not really looking to be serious. Or this is what I want. I'm looking to find a girlfriend pretty quick. I'm trying to get married in the next 5 years, right? When you put those things out there, what happens if they're accepted? What happens if she says, yeah, I'm very similar. I come from a real conservative family, and I want to get married pretty quickly too. And these are the things that I'm looking for, and I'm pretty securely attached. And you're like, whoa, let's slow down. Like if you're not prepared for her to like actually like you, for her to actually want to follow down the same path that you're talking about, then like what's the point of the qualification? So before the date, when you go out, make a vision of what is going to happen if you're actually successful at what you're doing, and you're going to be much better prepared for when the success stuff happens. You'll be able to see those opportunities. Yeah, this video is getting kind of long, so I'm going to skip a lot of this stuff. So anyway, figure out what you want. Communicate it clearly. Figure out what she wants. Dig emotionally, and be present into the interaction so that you can actually qualify to see whether she deserves to go to the next level or you want to take it there. And then amp yourself up, like visualize success before you go out, so you'll be able to notice it in real time after the fact. At the end of the day, I think I'm going to do another video on dating in general, because you're going to do a lot of this before you find people that you'll connect with. Like I said, you can't force connection. You can't force compatibility, really. But when it does happen, you got to be ready for it. So that takes a lot of iteration. And I think, like I said, I'm talking about this in a different video. I was going to finish this whole thing, but it's going to be twice as long. It'll be a 45-minute video. So look for part 2 tomorrow. I'll finish it tomorrow. And until then, thanks for joining me, and stay awesome. The camera's on that side now. Stay awesome.